So looking at evaluating difference quotient, this is very similar to function notation. So we just reviewed a bunch of function notation terminology, methods of solving. So I'm going to use this information or that information to solve this page of notes. So I would have a highlighter if possible nearby, or you could just use your pencil and box some things. But the difference quotient is an expression that's written in this form. On tests and quizzes, I'm not 100% sure if we're just going to give you this equation or expression, or if you're going to have to know it yourself. So if I were you, I would try to put this expression to memory, but you should definitely try to at least memorize it. Try. Another way that you could write this exact same formula is f of x plus h minus f of x. And this is all over h. This is another way that you could write the exact same thing. This is pretty much a formula that's going to help you with an average change that you're going to learn more about when you get into calculus. So this is just an intro to what you're going to be learning. So some important properties that are going to help us in solving this equation or expression, excuse me, what's going to help us solving this expression are listed down here. So in the numerator of your difference quotient, which is this equation or expression here, both of these expressions, any term that does not subtract or does not contain an h should be subtracted off. So we'll go through that in just a second. I'll come back to this page. It says any term that does not contain h must be subtracted off. So we'll see what that looks like after we start solving one of the questions. When you're evaluating functions, remember that whatever is inside your parentheses, regardless of what it looks like, is going to be substituted for every variable x. So if I had this question here, notice that I have two x's. When I substitute, I better substitute in, especially for this a plus h, I better substitute in for both of those x's. So wherever you see an x, I don't care how much you like it, how much you don't like it, you have to replace with whatever you're plugging it into. And then the last part is when you're evaluating your difference quotient, the h in the denominator must divide out. It's going to actually always divide out. So when you're evaluating, so when you're actually simplifying this expression and you're getting to your final answer, the h in your denominator should be gone. So before I look at a few examples, I'm going to talk about some common mistakes to avoid, which I know somebody's probably not paying attention. They're going to forget. So I'm going to go through them anyway. Note that f of a plus h is not f of a plus a random h. When you're substituting in f of a plus h, it looks just like this. You're going to plug it in for every single x that you see. So that includes that h. So notice the a plus h is here, a plus h is here. I also want you to remember that when you're squaring a binomial, you can't just distribute that squared and say that you're done. Whenever you have a binomial that's being squared, you're going to have to rewrite it as a plus h times a plus h in order to get your trinomial. You have to do that every single time. I cannot stress that enough. And the way that you simplify this is using foil. Not aluminum foil, but the method. And then the last part is do not distribute inside a quantity that's raised to a power. So what that means is this 3 that's in front of a plus h, don't distribute it right away. Wait until after you simplify the parentheses and then distribute the 3. This is just following basic PEMDAS operations. You deal with the exponents first, then you multiply. So all of these things that I've talked about on the front page, I know you're like, Ms. Tapia, this makes no sense. Let's look at question 1 on the next page. So all of this is going to be wrapped up pretty nicely on this next page. All right, so on this back side, it says for our problems, we're going to find this quotient. So this expression for your difference quotient. If we have, for instance, here, f of x and f of x plus h, we can rewrite it as f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. I'm giving you both ways because it honestly doesn't matter what variable you plug in. I don't care if you plug in an x or if you plug in an a as an apple, but they both need to have the exact same numbers and coefficients if they have any. Okay, so let's use the f of x plus h formula, so this guy here, this difference quotient, to simplify this problem. So this one says f of x equals x plus 2. I know it's a bunch of highlighter behind it, but we'll make it do. We have f of x plus 2. Here we have that f of x equals, okay, well, what does f of x equal? X plus 2. And we also have f of x plus h. Okay, well, I have x plus 2 here. So instead of this x, I'm going to substitute in an x plus h. And I always plug these in using parentheses in case something simplifies. Is anything going to simplify in the parentheses? No, so we're just going to rewrite this as x plus h plus 2. What we're now going to do is substitute this expression here and this expression here into your difference quotient. That's the formula I gave you at the top in pink. So let's recopy what I'm going to substitute it into. And let's simplify. What did we say f of x plus h was? And we're going to subtract it from f of x, which was the very first thing that we put in. We're going to divide all of this by h. Jorge, just looking at this, what do you think I'm going to do? Okay. And if I'm moving too fast, guys, tell me. We're going to distribute the negative sign. Am I going to need to change anything inside this parentheses, though? Yes or no? No, we're not going to. So we're going to keep the first part the same. The second one, though, I need to make this negative x minus 2. And I'm going to divide all of this by h. Chelsea, look in the numerator of this fraction. Is there anything that I can combine? Okay, both of the 2's. And you said the x's? What happens to both of these? Say it again. They cancel out. These are gone and these are gone. So Chelsea, what's left in the numerator? H. And what's left in the denominator? H. You guys tell me, when you divide h by h, is that 0 or 1? 1. That's your answer. That's all we're doing. So let me go through the things on the first page that we actually did on this page to get our answer. So on this first page, one of the things I highlighted was in the numerator, any term that does not contain an h must be subtracted off. Any term in your numerator that does not contain an h must be subtracted off. Chelsea just helped us with this. And this is going to work for every question that you do. Whatever your f of x is or your f of a, that should always, all of those variables and numbers should be gone after you distribute. The last thing is, when you're evaluating your difference, so when you're finally simplifying, the h in the denominator is always going to divide out. So notice how the very last step, we divided h over h, that canceled. That's what left us with the 1. So for every question that we do, we're going to see this exact same kind of procedure happen again. Not the same answer, but same procedure. All right, let's do the next question. This one is asking for us to use f of a and f of a plus h. So let me rewrite the formula that we're going to use. Okay, well, this one really isn't f of a, but I can make it into f of a. What's f of a going to look like for this expression? 3a minus 5. And then I also need to substitute in an a plus h. So in this problem, I'm going to put 3 times a plus h minus 5. All right, well, obviously here I have to distribute. And this is what I get. Okay, so I have f of a plus h, that's this guy here. And I have f of a, which is this guy at the top. Let's plug this stuff into our formula. So in my formula, I'm going to have f of a plus h, which is 3a, plus 3h minus 5. Every time I plug stuff in, always use a set of parentheses. Minus f of a, which is 3a minus 5. And we're going to divide all of this by h. Carlos, looking in the numerator, ignore the h in the denominator. What can I do in the numerator to simplify? Distribute the negative again, and based on the discussion we just had, hopefully both of those things go away. If they don't go away, don't just cancel them. We might have messed up. And in front of this parentheses here, do we need to distribute anything? No. So we're going to have 3a plus 3h minus 5 minus 3a plus 5. Be careful with your signs. And if you notice my signs or numbers are messed up, please tell me as soon as you notice. In that numerator, I need to see if anything can cancel. Jacqueline, can I cancel anything? And if so, what? The 5s and the 3a's. Just like I said on the first page, after you distribute in your numerator, you should have all of the f of a or f of x completely gone. So you should only be left with h's in your numerator. So I'm going to have 3h over h. What happens to the h's? Your answer is 3. That's all we're doing. So all I need you guys to do is simplify first and then see if anything can cancel. We're going to look at example 3 next. So let's look on the next page, example 3. Example 3, examples 1 and 2 have simplified extremely nicely. We were able to get a 1 for our answer and a 3 for our answer. Very simple and nice, pretty answers. For the next page, they're still going to simplify very nicely, but we're going to see some other things added in instead. So on this side for number 3, let's go ahead and look at it. So again, we have the a plus h that I see and the f of a. So I'm going to rewrite over here, f of a plus h, f of a all over h. Okay, so it's saying for me to use f of a, I have f of x. Okay, we saw this on the last question. All we really need to do is replace that x with an a. For the a plus h, though, we have to do something a little different. I need to do a plus h squared minus 4. Can I just distribute that to both of those? No, what do I have to do? FOIL. So over here to the side, I'm going to put a plus h times a plus h. And this is going to be very important when you take your tests and quizzes. If you have a question that looks like this, just solve this a plus h thing one time, and you can use it for all the questions you have that require you to FOIL. So I'll say that again. Don't just write it on the paper. When you're solving the question, if you notice you have something like this, do this off to the side, maybe box it, and then you can keep coming back to it. I don't want you to have to keep refoiling every time for every question. Does that make sense? All right, so let's distribute. We're going to do a times a, which is a squared, a times h, which is ah, h times a. Is that the same thing as ah? Yeah, it's just being multiplied. And then h times h is h squared. If you were to combine both of these terms, what would you get? Ooh, thank you for not saying a squared, h squared. This is a squared plus 2ah plus h squared. Use this every single time if you need it. If you notice back on the first page, which I doubt you did, that's the same answer we have here. The reason why I had you multiply this out is because on your tests and quizzes, you're not going to have this answer readily available. So I need you to know how to FOIL it so you can get the answer on your own. Okay, so last thing. We have this FOILed. I'm going to substitute it in. A squared plus 2ah plus h squared minus 4. Okay, I need to see if anything can simplify inside or the parentheses or maybe directly in front. You'll thank me later. There's nothing to distribute in front of this parentheses, so I'm just going to drop the parentheses. And I'm going to do one quick look at everything. Can I cancel or combine anything? I can't. Okay, well, that's the most I can simplify. Now we're going to substitute it into our difference quotient. This for a plus h, this for a. Get a head start. Do it before I do. Start plugging your stuff in and see how it's going to cancel. Valeria, you okay? You sure? I'm just plugging all of this in. I'm going to slowly start working through it. I just want to make sure you guys are on the same page. So I just did a quick look even after I canceled everything. I know that the F of A, so the stuff at the very end that's kind of the opposite sign, I know these should definitely cancel. But I just do a quick check to make sure that I've canceled everything before I rewrite my final part. 2AH plus H squared over H. Okay, I'm supposed to cancel my denominator. It said it on the first page. It's been proving true so far. In the numerator, you should have nothing left but H's. And in the denominator, you should have an H that divides out. How do I get this H to cancel? Just the H squared? Okay, so what can I do with that to show that I can cancel that out? Begins with the F. You can factor. You have an H here and you have an H here. You technically have two H's here. Let's factor out one H from each term, 2A plus H over H, so that way you can see how we're canceling this. The reason why these cancel isn't because, oh, all three of these have an H. Make sure you factor that out because it connects with what we've been doing. Since this H is being multiplied by this parentheses, that's why I can cancel it. Don't just cancel it because you're adding and subtracting numbers. You have to make sure that it's being multiplied by both of those terms. And then once you get your answer, you'll have 2A plus H. That's your answer. That is an H as in horse. All right, I believe in you guys. Try number 5. I'll give you about 3 minutes to start it off. Do the same procedures I'm doing. F of A and then F of A plus H. If you're like, Ms. Tapia, I just want to use F of X plus H and F of X. You're fine. Use that. But instead of an A here, you're going to have an X if you use F of X plus H. All right, so right now, try number 5. The space up here at the top, you can use for more space to do your work. And again, I'm going to use the F of A plus H form. All right, I'm going to give you 3 minutes. Start this off. Okay, for question number 5, I'm just starting you off with this, and then I'm gonna allow you to finish it. I'm just making sure that your answers look good. So f of a is 4a squared plus 3a minus 2. For f of a plus h, this is going to be 4 times a plus h squared plus 3 times a plus h minus 2. Remember how I said you only have to do the a plus h squared one time on your tests and quizzes? All you needed to do was recopy this onto the other page. So the a squared plus 2ah plus h squared. So I'm going to have 4 parentheses, a squared plus 2ah plus h squared plus 3 times a plus h minus 2. All you need to do from here is distribute. So again, you guys watch my work, I'll watch your work. Make sure you guys are copying it how I am and make sure I'm writing the correct numbers. So 4 times a is 4a squared. That's a 2. 4 times 2 is 8ah. 4 times h is 4h squared. I'm done with the 4s. 3 times a is 3a. 3 times h is 3h. And then at the very end, minus 2. All of this is what you're plugging in for 4ah. So now that you have both parts of this, the AH and the A for this numerator, plug it in. If you don't understand something, I need to hear your voice or see your hand. I'm giving y'all 2 more minutes to finish this up. If you finish with number 5, move on to number 6. That one's way more fun. All right, let's see what you got. So you should have plugged all of this in. Plus 3h. So in the first part, I don't have to distribute anything, but I do need to distribute here. I know you're like, oh, I don't want to rewrite it. If I'm rewriting it and I'm older, you can definitely do it. You notice anything that looks off? Tell me. All right, let me make sure. The a squared should cancel. The 3a's should cancel. And the 2's should cancel. Yeah, that's why I always give you guys a lot of space for these questions. Or you can ask for more space on tests and quizzes. Just ask for a separate sheet of paper and I'll give it to you. Okay, let me see what I have left. I have a 3ah, I have a 4h squared, and I have a 3h. 8ah, 4h squared plus 3h all over h. Just like we did before, I know Giselle was saying we can try to cancel the h's. Before you do that, you have an h here, 2 h's, and another h here. Factor that out so you can cancel it correctly. There's 1 h still remaining here. That's okay. Plus 3, all divided by h. Once you do that, your final answer is 8a plus 4h plus 3. That's your answer. Questions or concerns? Already have a real party on the next page? Because I am. It's super exciting. Let's look at number 6. If you have a question, guys, tell me before I flip the page. All right, number 6 it is. For number 6, it doesn't say which function difference quotient to use, whether it's the a or the x. It doesn't matter. Like I said before, on tests and quizzes, I don't care which one you use. If you give me the x, that's fine. If you give me the a, that's fine. If you use the x one for f of x plus h, you would have 8x plus 4h plus 3. It's not a big deal. I can easily tell the difference between an a and an x. For number 6, we still need to find f of a, or you can use f of x, and we still need to find f of a plus h. Okay, well, f of a is just 1 over a. I hope we can agree on that. And for f of a plus h, I'm going to make this 1 over a plus h. Now I need to substitute it into my difference quotient. This is minus f of a. All right, so in my numerator, I'm going to have 1 over a plus h minus 1 over a. And we're going to divide all of that by h. Let me ask you this. Can I rewrite this as 1 over a plus 1 over h minus 1 over a and just cancel those for the numerator? I know you want to, but can you do it? No. Sorry, can't do it. Instead, what do you need to find in your numerator? You have to find a common denominator. You're subtracting both of these. Your denominator for the first one has to stay as 2 numbers being added. You can't just split them up. That's not how that works. So in order to find a common denominator, ignore the h. How do I find a common denominator for this? What do I need to do? You can't just add h. When you're finding a common denominator, you're multiplying. So I need to multiply by something. I can't multiply by h because then this would be ah. What can I do instead? Okay, what would that be? Multiply by each other. Just do the pretty much take this a plus h, multiply it over here. And then take this a, multiply it on the other side. Don't make it difficult. Take the denominators for each because there's really not a way to find a common one. The only common one you can do is if you multiply both of them. So I'm going to rewrite this as, in the first fraction, we're going to have a times 1. This is an a as an apple, not a 9. A is an apple times 1, so that's going to be a. Denominator is a times a plus h. So a times a plus h. And you don't have to put the a in parentheses. When I multiply the second one, isn't this denominator going to become a plus h, or excuse me, isn't this denominator for the second fraction going to also become a times a plus h? Do you guys agree with that? Okay, good. So instead of writing 2 separate fractions, I'm just going to write one big one, and I'm going to do minus 1 times a plus b, or excuse me, 1 times a plus h. When you multiply 1 times a plus h, is that going to change anything? No, 1 times anything is just what you're multiplying. So a plus h. And we're dividing all of this by h. Take a second and look at it before I continue. Have I lost anybody with what I just did? All I did was the first one, I multiplied straight across, I'm subtracting it from the second one, so that's why I have the subtraction symbol. We had agreed the denominators for both of these are going to become the same. That's the whole point of multiplying. What can I do in the numerator of the numerator with that negative? Distribute. So we're going to have in the numerator up here at the top, a minus h. The denominator here is still a times a plus h. And we're dividing all of that by h. In your numerator, both of the a's cancel. So I'm left with negative h over a times a plus h all over h. Take a second and look at it. If you have a question, now's a perfect time to ask. What can I do from here? Keep, change, flip. Good job, Jorge. Negative h over a times a plus h. And remember, I didn't keep this a in parentheses. You didn't have to do this. I just wasn't thinking. And we're going to multiply it by this reciprocal. So h is over 1 right now. We're going to make it 1 over h. Remember, Miss Tapia is lazy. I really don't want to have to multiply h times 1 and then a times h, a plus h times h. What can I do with both of the h's? So be careful. Be very careful. What's left in this numerator? Ooh, thank you for that negative. Negative 1 over a times a plus h. This is your answer. If you're like, wait, Miss Tapia, there's still an h in the denominator. If there is, but we eliminated the denominator that had the h at the very beginning. So this h, 1 over h, was the very beginning h that we had here at the beginning of our problem. So this one's okay. If you distribute that a to both of those terms, you'll still get credit. But remember, I'm a little lazy. I don't want to have to do it unless I have to. Are there any last questions? All of the remaining questions in here are extra practice for you on your tests and quizzes. This question 7, it looks disgusting, and it's going to be, I'll tell you now, a similar process as to what we did here. You're going to have to find a common denominator.